Hello everyone, it's your boy Matt here, making a video today to discuss some of the good practices I've seen, some of the things which for a while gave me some hope regarding how the NDIS functioned. I've always had a left-wing bent. Actually, I'll take that back. When I was a kid, I grew up in this very conservative community. I was raised that free market capitalism was a great thing, and Western civilization is held together by Judeo-Christian principles. I don't believe that so much anymore. I think there is some parts of that narrative which aren't complete bullshit, but nowhere near as much as the more ideologically invested conservative Christians may believe. Overall, I've had an open mind to a lot of ideas which are more conservative, even though I am part of a very much left-wing community. Most of the literature I read is quite left-wing when it's advocating for positions. I do engage with alternative voices. I make sure that I'm not just jumping up and down in my own echo chamber when I can. And for a while, I had an open mind about some of the NDIS companies. When I first started working at Care Squad Kids at Henderson Health Group, I was originally kind of impressed with parts of the organisation. People seemed quite passionate about parts of their work. People seemed to be doing work of some kind, which was good. I always remember my time working at Catholic Care and just how laughably inefficient a lot of NGOs are. And when I started working at this firm, I was like, okay, there is a degree of some professionalism here. These people, they're working very hard. They're aiming for goals. It was all part of a more broad corporate religion, which I came to understand later on. But I came into it with an open mind, and what I found was that there were some approaches which came out as adaptations to the NDIS price guide and as means of really just finding ways to get as much money as possible from the system, but also try and find some kind of service. And some of these things did make a bit of sense. I will give Amanda Mazzoni credit where it is due. She's a legitimate developmental psychologist. My view is she got caught up in a corporate haze, but she was able to come up with some models of therapy which, while exceedingly expensive and completely inappropriate for the NDIS system, did seem to have some effectiveness and some sense in their approach. A big practice that Amanda Mazzoni stressed was therapy planning. So when we designed and ran interventions. That's kind of the approach that ideally Care Squared Kids was implementing. And this approach to designing and running the intervention included a little qualitative study for every single participant that we had. We spent a long time interviewing them, and we had the opportunity to reflect on that person's life and to really understand them by writing these reports. Ultimately, those reports had back-end issues. As we were producing so many of these reports, what happened is that the bureaucracy at the NDIS, where they just weren't able to process it, and that's a big thing throughout the entire system. There really just needs to be one report written by a healthcare practitioner for each participant. The way that the system works, it's designed to give as much money as possible to the market of people who write these reports. It's built around a consultancy model. But there was this extended opportunity to really reflect and be able to design the intervention around different therapeutic techniques. So I would write interventions and I'd get the opportunity to design each session in beforehand. So there was this session planning aspect. And of course we charge the client for that. It's intellectual work. You do the work, you get paid. You've got a lot of very bright, very well-trained people. They're gonna, you have to pay them for their work. Just because it's not physical labor does not mean it's not labor. A lot of the intellectual labor is actually far more difficult, more strenuous in a lot of ways than physical labor sometimes. But that being said, I'll get back to my description of these things. So yeah, there was this aspect which kind of had me interested, and because everyone seemed to be working for a while, I thought, okay, maybe this is just what's required to get large groups of people to be productive, is that we need to have these incentive structures, we need to have management who are kind of almost being sadistic, using employee monitoring and weird shit like that. And over time I just realized, I just worked for corporate sociopaths. Like they had it was terrible. They're terrible people. But there are parts of that approach which made sense to me. A big issue that I have, though, is at my end, because I was associated with these people and I was still a junior psych, and I'm kind of learning how the system works. I've had to be exposed to all these really shitty practices and terrible things, and being taught to do really shitty things, if I'm honest. The way that we were charging participants and the business model was not useful to our clients. I often found, and I found often that I was having to advocate to my company on behalf of my clients regarding the sharp business practices that my management were getting me to enact. Ultimately, I lost my job following my management ceasing to talk to me at all, following myself complaining to my boss about a client being charged something like $1,200 per hour of therapy because we were tacking all these other services onto their NDIS plan, all these kind of thinking exercises, all this design work rather than the actual implementation of the therapy. Remember, I'm the guy at the bottom. I do what my manager says. I write the report. I plan the things. Each week we sit down and they tell me how this system works, right? And it felt right because there was this design element to it. We were really thinking about what we were doing. This is the kind of work which I can see a legitimate developmental psychologist approach, that a legitimate developmental psychologist such as Amanda Mazzoni would see as beneficial. It had the feeling of professionalism, but it wasn't professional. It was just fucking screwing over poor people who didn't understand the NDIS. And what would often happen is that they'd send out bills, which I didn't like. It took me a while to see how the billing and practices worked there. And I would often end up in situations where my clients were getting billed for services which I decided not to provide or didn't think it was appropriate for us to bill for. And then I'd end up in situations where I have angry customers yelling at me because of some bullshit that my management did, which I had no control over. And because I'm the face in the area, if there's some corporate malpractice, which definitely happened at Care Squared Kids, I'm the person who was the face there, so I get associated with all these borderline criminal practices. It's not me who did it, right? That's the reason why I think in the end I wasn't able to tolerate working there. It wasn't just the shitty practices, it was the complete lack of understanding that I was responsible for these people and I had therapeutic relationships with these people, and the incompetence and the malpractice at the corporate end, at the administrative end, was really getting in the way of me providing the service to these participants. It was ruining our relationships, our working relationships, and I was constantly just really just being kind of put out in the front as like a fall guy. Anytime there was a situation where I knew there was going to be a lot of legal liability, I tried to make sure sessions were recorded or something like this, because I know I work for corporate sociopaths who will do whatever they need to do to maintain their part of the profits, their part of the pie. and they did everything they could to marginalize me, to make me look shit, to avoid accountability for their behavior, and to make money. That's the worst thing. It was done entirely out of greed. They were fucking exploiting people, and I unfortunately party to this, because I'm the junior psych at the bottom. I have my professional reputation kind of controlled by these people, and it took me a while to really understand the extent of how shit things were there, and how shit the NDIS is, how corrupt it's been, be able to formulate my ability to be able to communicate how terrible it is, because I've been at the bottom of a pretty fucking cutthroat and sociopathic hierarchy. Psychologists, particularly in the corporate world, these people aren't necessarily good people. Just because someone understands or studies human nature doesn't mean they're going to do anything good with it. And yeah, no, that's my experience there. Have a good one.